We can resume our meeting. Kenneth, we now enter Chapter 3. Before we start, I'm aware Mr. Wong has a very heavy schedule, so parts 3 and 4 and 5, you're welcome to stay, but you're not involved, and you can leave if you wish. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, we'll start part 3, speeding and red light jumping. Would like to have it on record. I'd like to commend the police chief that he's done a lot of work in these areas, and we all feel in Hong Kong it's not worth it to speed. You can get caught. I have some questions, and the Audit Commission's recommendation in paragraphs 3.18a, the average speed camera system. My feeling is Hong Kong likes to draw reference from overseas experience, but when we use the average speed camera system, it's only applicable to highways, and all the times we have congestion on highways in Hong Kong. So I'd like to ask the police chief, if you want to deploy these average speed camera systems, will you just choose a couple of highways, and how much money will be spent? Transport, Commissioner for Transport. The legislator's observation is correct. The average speed camera system is only suitable for long stretches of road. Its effectiveness would be better than cameras. The audit report mentioned that individual cameras, they are aware that there's a camera and they will slow down, but they will accelerate after they leave the camera's area. But the average speed camera system can calculate the average speed, and if there is speeding, we can prosecute. So to have a similar effect on a long stretch, then we need to install a lot of cameras. So for long stretches of road, it's very effective. This is something we'd like to implement, but we won't deploy less traditional cameras. Regarding the budget, allow me to supplement this information later. We are now undertaking a trial. We only have the figures for the trial, the budget for the trial. Of course, this is just a trial scheme. In speeding and red light jumping, one issue of concern is that the images taken cannot accurately capture the license plate number. You can refer to 3.16a, where it says 9% on average violation images are blocked by other vehicles. While there are other reasons, as pointed out in the report, the license will reflect light or there's insufficient lighting to capture the license. So the cameras, whether it's speeding camera or red light jumping cameras, these were introduced in the late 90s. So given these problems, I'd like to ask Transport or Police Department, what can be done to enhance the images? And I'd also like to know if we are to upgrade these camera systems, how much money will be spent? Transport Commissioner, there are some cases where we have unclear images, blocked by vehicles, and one overseas method is to use multiple cameras to take pictures from different angles. So using more than one camera does not resolve the problem 100%. We have 9% of cases, it cannot be reduced to 0. There will still be some of these cases, but the costs will increase dramatically. There's also a technical issue that our roads are very congested. We need to have a lot of we have a lot of underground installations, and it's very hard to make to add new installations. Usually, for red light jumping, we have to install the cameras in the nearby area. It's very hard to install additional cameras. So if we are to add costs, but effectiveness is not being enhanced, we've of the view that the same money or even less money could be used to we could probably get better results if we install cameras at the red light junctions. So this 9% of cases, are they concentrated in certain areas and we can add more cameras in these areas? We don't have that analysis, whether it's concentrated in certain areas. Usually these images are blocked by large vehicles, and this is very common in the urban area. Do you have black spots? 9% is not a high figure, so we don't have special analysis. Yes, but we can conduct some analysis to see if whether certain junctions attract a higher percentage. But you can imagine it's very common to have buses in the downtown area, and these might block the cameras. I have a policy question. You cannot capture the driver picture, especially when the registered owner of the vehicle is a company. So do we have a policy consideration where the company, the vehicle is registered in the company name, and under the current legislation, if you can't take a picture of the driver, you can't prosecute. But even a company has a legal representative, and they also have vicarious liability. So if you can't prosecute the driver, then perhaps you should prosecute the director or the CEO. So the company will try to identify who was driving the vehicle during the time in question. So, could you respond to that? We had not considered the issue from this perspective, but should we target this problem? And we can look, but we have an open attitude. We can look at it. Is there anything that you could share with us, Commissioner for Transport? Well, in these cases, we will ask the drivers, including the companies, to provide information. But sometimes the company says they have no idea who was driving the vehicle at the time. But we can consider this, but we have to be careful of the legal ramifications. We will have to consult our legal consultant. Mr. Cheung? If the vehicle is registered in an individual's name, of course they have the liability. The only difference with a company being registered as the owner of the vehicle is that the company cannot be jailed. I have no more questions on this chapter. I'm saying. In 3.16c, it says that even if they can't take a clear picture, we don't see this type of offense increasing. So if the number of cases are minimal, I agree. Then, since we only have 9% of images being blocked, and there's no shifting of responsibility, so there's no need to add more cameras. So I agree with the cost effectiveness issue, and this is just my comment. But I have a question about the laser gun. In diagram 5, it says there are 52 of these laser guns, and there are also radars being used. So it indicates that the laser gun is still a major piece of equipment in use. But there has been a case where the laser has been challenged. So I'd like to ask, using the laser gun, is there a guideline on its use? And given the court's questioning of these equipment, has the issue been resolved? Regarding the use of the laser gun, there is a very stringent requirement and a scientific basis. We have also taken on board the court's views on the use of these equipment. Well, do you have some guidelines, up-to-date guidelines for our information? Yes, we do have operation guidelines, and I am willing to submit these for your review. But whether this should be disclosed publicly, it's something else, because it affects law enforcement. I'd like to ask another question. Kenneth had asked this before. In paragraph 3.19a, it says you want to explore overseas experience on new technology. So I'd like to ask, up till now, have you identified areas that are suitable for learning?
Could you give some examples of those jurisdictions which can serve as useful reference for us, and that we can learn from the experience? And secondly, regarding the new technology, which types of new technologies are now being studied, and there's a possibility for you to bring in such new technologies, and what is the progress so far as far as that study is concerned? Commissioner? Chairman, when we make reference of overseas experience, we do not confine ourselves to any particular jurisdiction. We are a very crowded city. We would therefore locate similar cities in advanced countries. As I said, the average speed camera, we will look at jurisdictions which have deployed such cameras where on long stretches of road. Mr. Ng asked, what are the new technologies that we're now considering to adopt? All along, we have been exploring new technologies. Since 2009, we've actually digitalized all the speed the cameras. We've also enhanced the resolution of the photos. We also have the text identification system so that we're better able to identify the license plate numbers. And we also have plans to use data transmission technology so that the law enforcement will not need to collect information at road junctions regarding speeding. We will also consider using RFID and high-resolution cameras to provide for better images and footages. We hope that these will help to improve the quality of enforcement. Mr. Ng asked, which are the jurisdictions that you will be studying? Chairman, we have not restricted ourselves to any one or two particular jurisdictions. Normally, we'll be looking at the more advanced countries like and major cities in Europe, for example, where the conditions are similar to ours. For on high-speed roads, whether it's in the urban area, we will look at the experience of other jurisdictions where they have deployed such cameras on high-speed roadways. Well, will you allow more drivers to know that you are now conducting such studies? Could you do it in an interactive manner? You're both the beneficiary and the victims. If you have these new studies which will regulate the drivers, could you, for example, consult the ensure that the consultation will not be one way, but rather it's going to be interactive process so that the stakeholders can give you, their suggestions. Now that you are conducting a study on the new technologies, would you conduct public consultation, or would you solicit suggestions from the drivers? Commissioner or Secretary. What I'd like to say is that while we're interested in listening to the views from the members of the community, the Commissioner talked about making reference of overseas experience. That is, any experience that is of useful reference, we will certainly look at. Looking at experience in other jurisdictions, we have to bear in mind the particular characteristics of our city. Regarding the use of new technology, we found out that when we try, the report mentioned that in some cases we're not able to capture the image of the offending vehicle, or that the image is not very clear, not clear enough. So these are the technologies that we're looking at. I believe we need to scientifically ensure that the efficacy of the equipment could be further improved. Commissioner? Mr. To. Now, Chairman, we have a transport safety committee which looks into all these advanced technologies. We also would consult with academics and drivers, and also driving instruction academies and the Hong Kong School of Motoring, Basically, we would look at the technology level and see how and consider how these new technologies could be deployed in Hong Kong and how effective it would be if they were used. Alan, thank you. I think one of the cities that we should learn from the experience is Tokyo. As the Commissioner of Transport said earlier, of 80,000 people, 1 million people, there are only 14 accidents per million. Chairman, I'd like to further clarify some facts. Regarding the average speed camera, I understand that according to para 3.10 of the report, we're told that back in 1999, some countries are already using this system, whereas Hong Kong is seriously lagging behind. If you look at paragraph 3.11, we started studying this in 2007, 8 years after some other jurisdictions have already started using such cameras. And that's not the end of the story. And the study, instead of 1 year, have been extended for 6 years. And only earlier that we know that in mid-2013, you will come to the Finance Committee for funding, and that you will only launch a trial scheme in 2013-14. From 1999 to 2007, that's the first section, 2007 to 2013. During these two periods, why had it taken so long? Secretary, I'd like the Commissioner to answer the question. Since 2007, we work with the Police Department and the Transport and Housing Bureau regarding the possible use of the average speed cameras. We need to look at several issues. This system is not the traditional, speed cameras. We need the time to explore the new technologies, including the implications of what is applicable for us to use to tackle speeding, and also whether or not the evidence obtained using such new technology will be stringent enough that it will be accepted, and thirdly, whether or not this would be a breach of the Privacy Protection of Personal Data Ordinance, and how can we ensure the personal data are protected. The normal camera would only be triggered when there is speeding. For the average speed camera, the system would every time a vehicle pass through the section of the road, they will be captured. All the vehicles will be captured, and then the system will automatically work out the average speed of all the vehicles passing through. So in other words, it's not only the speeding vehicles will be captured. The system will need to make a calculation before deciding where there is any speeding. So the issue is whether or not the privacy of people driving through that section of road has been violated. So we need to conduct some consultation. So in the pilot, we've actually encrypted information capture so that it will not be available to other people. And secondly, we want to ensure that vehicles which are not speeding that the images will be discarded. The third question we need to consider is that compared with the traditional enforcement camera system, as Mr. Kenneth Leung asked, whether we have many such roads for us to deploy these average speed cameras, and how effective would it be, because we need to deploy many such cameras compared with simply deploying a single speed camera at a junction. And also compare that with erecting several cameras at different sections of the junction. So we need to make such calculations. Well, these cameras have been used for some time, but given that this is a new technology and the manufacturers have been constantly upgrading their technology and overcoming the constraints, for the first 10 years since 2007, they've been constantly making improvements. And in Australia, they've only started using the system in 2010. Mr. Leung said that from 2007 to 1999, from the first part is from 1999 to 2007. Mr. Leung was saying that during that period you've not done anything. Mr. Leung, perhaps they haven't answered your question. Perhaps they've answered the question. You wait until other people have made mistakes so that you can learn from those mistakes. That's my understanding, right? Could you answer the question? That is between 1999 and 2007. Well, well, yeah, certainly. We wanted to wait until the technology becomes more mature before we consider deploying them, and also we had to wait until the manufacturers have upgraded the system. Well, I think you have to answer members' questions, otherwise we can assume that you've answered your question because later on we need to write a report. Alan. Chairman is most concerned that the Commissioner might have left out something in your response, and then our report going forward may not be comprehensive enough. Okay, what's well, done's been done, and you say that in the middle of this year you will come to the FC to apply for funding. I'm sure at that time you will be also provide us with a paper. You intend to launch a trial scheme in 2013-14. What are you going to put on trial? Will you wait until you've ascertained the results of the trial scheme before you will implement the average speed camera system? If you have such a rough plan in mind, could you tell us beforehand? Commissioner, would you like to answer the question, or would you like to reserve your answers? Chairman, if I may, give a general response. A pilot means that we would want to find out whether there are any unanticipated problems, which I can't tell members at the moment. It is our plan that 2 or 3 weeks later we will go to the transport panel to obtain support from its members. At the Shenzhen Bay Bridge, where you have a long stretch of road, we will conduct a trial there. We picked this section of road because there are different speed limits along different sections of this road. Like take the Eastern Corridor, there's only a single speed limit. But in this case, there are different speed limits, and so we want to find out under different speed scenarios how would this technology perform. So how the technology perform is of course a major consideration that we'll look at. We would also, since we've not tried to obtain such data in Hong Kong and use it as evidence for prosecution, we want to find out whether or not the evidence collected will be strong enough that it will be admitted in court. And thirdly, regarding the question of privacy, we would need to find out how effective this system is, and whether or not the encryption is really very stringent, and also whether or not we are expedient enough in discarding useless information and so on. So these are the things that we want to put on trial. There are very few vehicles, driving on that stretch of road near the Shenzhen Bay. So will this really work, Chairman? For roads that are crowded, there will be less speeding. Well, I was caught once. The Shenzhen Bay Bridge, I think the traffic flow is increasing every year. So I'm sure we can test there. There are different vehicles. Other than private vehicles, there are also heavy vehicles using that road. So it will be useful to help us test out the system on different types of vehicles. I think the Chairman asked a valid question. If you want to select a stretch of road to try the average speed camera, the first thing that comes to mind is the total highway, the airport highway and so on. But never mind, when you come to the panel, transit panel, we're asking the question again. Now, my next question is: how long do you intend to conduct the trial scheme before you will come to a conclusion, Commissioner? We want the test scheme to run for a year. Yes, Alan. According to the Commissioner, she understood that the behavior of the drivers. You know that there is a camera there, then you will brake the vehicle, and after you pass the camera, you step on the gas again. And to tackle this sort of driving habit, and if you want to catch the drivers who are speeding, so methods do you have at the moment? Will you catch them by surprise? You set a camera here, and immediately next to it, you set a short distance away, you set another camera to catch them by surprise. Previously, I've seen these, vehicles in disguise deployed by the police to catch the drivers who are speeding. At least they can make up for the inadequacies of the system. So, Commissioner, perhaps the police commissioner can answer the question. Thank you. Well, indeed, when we take enforcement against speeding, other than relying on the speed cameras, we have other methods of enforcement. Mr. Ng also asked a question regarding the laser gun. We also have handheld radars that can help us take pictures of the speeding vehicles. Or other than the locations where the speed cameras have been installed, we can use them elsewhere. Our divisional commander will also lay down guidelines that it's according to the distribution of the road sections where speeding is likely to happen, and considering also the safety. I think if you erect a camera there and it's unsafe, that you will create more accidents. So we will determine on the location of these cameras after considering all these factors. And they're not that hidden unless there are special reasons. When we set these cameras, we will not, camouflage them in any way. It is our purpose to let the drivers know that other than passing through this camera, you may encounter another one somewhere else. We also have, some police vehicles disguised as private vehicles to catch the speeding drivers. So other than speeding, they will also take enforcement against other driving offenses. People who are trying to race on the roads, I think that they would also go after them. And also, we also deploy bicycles to do that as well. But if there's an overriding need, we would consider deploying that. But we have many other such measures. Alan, I understand that consideration. Otherwise, the radio will not report every day about the locations of your speed cameras on a daily basis. Now, another question I'd like to ask is this. I'm sure the police commissioner knows, is a very realistic person. If you ride on a taxi, you may not ride on a taxi that so frequently, but if you sit in a taxi, you'll find that many of them have been installed with video cameras. When I asked the drivers why they set up their taxis with these cameras, they say that I think they want to, have the record should they be involved in an accident. Now, so many people are now installing their cars with these cameras. For the police to enforce the traffic ordinances, do you have any plans to make use of this major source of capturing data to help you take enforcement actions? I think very often on the on the Facebook and other blogs, we see reports of traffic violations, and if it is a serious case, and if the information is useful, we would follow up on them. So,
如果係佢唔願意。
And if that has been uploaded, and if he doesn't want to cooperate with us, that would be for the reference of the commanders of the traffic formations. For example, red light jumping, undesirable driving behavior, or speeding. Then if no one is willing to be the witness, then that would the information will serve as reference for our enforcement action. Alan. Chairman, a few months ago, Madam Sophia Kao went beyond the double white line. There was a photograph showing that, and that appeared in the newspapers, and it was said that Madam Sophia Kao admitted the act to the police, but then no prosecution action was taken. So now, if the driver has really admitted that he has or she has cut up the double white lines, then why is it that prosecution action has not been taken? I don't think we should discuss individual cases. I think we should be discussing policies. All right, I'll delete the name I've referred to. Now, say, for example, according to the CP, if a taxi driver is a good citizen and he uploads a clip onto the internet, or he brings the clip or takes the clip to a police station, then if the taxi driver is willing to be the witness, then is it that prosecution action will be taken? CP? Now, in fact, we do adopt consistent enforcement standards. If people who take the clips are willing to be witnesses, then of course we will take prosecution action. And I want to say that we will seek the advice of the DOJ in deciding whether to take prosecution action, and we will make no difference between ordinary people and the celebrities. Now, in fact, this is a reply that I like very much to hear. We're talking about a rule of law here in Hong Kong, and the CE should be treated like or other people before the law, for example. All right, Chairman, paragraph 3.12. Here we have figures from the police from October to December 2012. That's page 30 of the English version, paragraph 3.12, in the middle of the paragraph, from October to December 2012. Audit noted that 2,109 of the 22,871 red light jumping cases detected by the red light camera system could not be pursued. And that was about 9%. And that was because the images of the offending vehicles were blocked by other vehicles. And can I know the figure for the whole year? What about the other 3 quarters? So that we should just multiply this by 3 and you will get the figures for the remaining 3 quarters. CP, I don't have the information with me. I'll have to go back and check. Please give us the figure for the entire year. Thank you. Thank you. I have no other questions. David, do you have any information for us? No. I have no further questions. Paul Chair? Thank you, Chairman. Tell me if my question has already been asked during my absence. Concerning the concept of everybody playing the role of the police, so to speak. Now, you know, today in Hong Kong, everybody has a mobile phone, and the mobile phones do have photo-taking function. So, So I don't know whether Alan Leung is serious about it. Now you ask your own questions. Please do not try to second guess the intentions of other members in making certain comments. Now, yes, Chairman. We're told that the study has taken quite some time. Para 1.2 tells us that the traffic fatality rate is one of the lowest in the world. And do we know how many of these fatal accidents occurred on highways? And then concerning the 120 cases per year, I want to know the percentage the percentage of natural deaths in Hong Kong. Secretary, yes, we can provide the figure after the meeting. Paul, just now the Commissioner mentioned Tokyo. The fatality rate is even lower in Tokyo. But then in Hong Kong, most Hong Kong people rely on public transport, and so Tokyo is a meaningful comparison. But then in Western countries, many people rely on their own vehicles instead of public transport. So is it that we shouldn't be too complacent about our so-called low traffic fatality rate because our private vehicle ownership rate is much lower than that in Western countries, for example? And so have we looked at other places, other countries with a similar GDP or per capita level? Is it that our traffic fatality rate is really that low? Because and I think, Chairman, when we look at these figures, we have to be very careful because we have to look at the unique situation in different places. For example, the road conditions, the driving behavior of drivers. Singapore, 38 deaths per 1,000 people. Melbourne, 31. Tokyo, 14. But then Osaka, 21. Higher than Hong Kong. But I'm not saying that we should be happy about the situation in Hong Kong. When we talk about deaths, we shouldn't say that we are complacent, we are satisfied. But I want to say that these are cities with very busy and even congested road traffic conditions. Paul, of course we understand that one death is too many when we talk about human lives. With regard to when we talk about just now we talk about privacy, we talk about producing evidence in courts, but then it seems that the devices used in other places are more advanced than those used in Hong Kong. Now, when you were absent, CP gave a reply to Mr. Alan Leung on this matter. But CP or Commissioner, perhaps you can supplement. I've got nothing further to say, Chairman. I think what is important is that the technology must be mature enough for use. Because if we introduce the technology into Hong Kong and find that it doesn't suit Hong Kong, that would mean waste of public resources. I want to say that concerning the adoption of new technology, Australia adopted the technology only in 2010. So it really depends on where we are comparing ourselves with. But then can you address the privacy issue? Why is it that in those places it seems that their privacy standards are lower than ours? Now, I don't have information about how those countries deal with the issue of privacy. But then in Hong Kong, we need to observe our privacy laws. And we need to have more in-depth studies before we can come to any conclusion. Perhaps after the meeting, I can do some research as to how people, how they in other countries overcome the privacy hurdle, so to speak. When compared with other countries, we tend to err on the prudent and conservative side, and this may not be a bad thing. But then concerning speeding and red light jumping, Chairman, I want to know our conviction rates. Is it that you will take prosecution action only when the chance of conviction is very, very high? CP, Chairman, concerning red light jumping and speeding, I understand that the conviction rates are very high, over 90%. And how do we compare ourselves with other places or countries? Is the conviction rate here high? I don't have such information with me. CP. Now, a high conviction rate may not be a good thing because some may plead guilty because they do not want to have too much trouble. Sometimes when we issue of tickets, we just plead guilty in order to avoid trouble. So a high conviction rate may not necessarily be a good thing. Thank you for your question, Chairman. When we issue fixed penalty tickets or when we issue summonses, we have to make sure that we have adequate evidence concerning the red light jumping, detecting cameras. Of course, there are fixed images, and then for the laser guns, in fact, there are also images captured. Now, in fact, we as an enforcement agency have to make sure that there is adequate evidence to take prosecution action. But of course, sometimes drivers do not agree with us, so to speak. Now, in fact, that's our mechanism. Now we have the different traffic formations, the traffic divisions responsible for taking enforcement action. And if a fixed penalty ticket is issued to a person, if that person feels aggrieved, then he can lodge a complaint, and that complaint will be dealt with in the traffic headquarters. Chairman, when people put up a defense, and can we have the conviction rate for those cases? I'm not talking about those who plead guilty, say for fear of trouble. We don't have the information, but we'll try to do some research, because we want to know whether the police's prosecution policy is just right, too conservative, too relaxed, or what. So we want to know the conviction rate for cases where the drivers do not plead guilty. All right, we'll see whether we can gather such information. Yes, Paul? And then, Chairman, pending the introduction of new technology, what can we do in the interim to bring about some improvements to the situation? I believe you've already given a reply, CP, but can you briefly supplement? No, except the apart from the fixed location cameras, we have the laser guns, the so-called hidden vehicles, handheld radars, and also the traffic motorbikes also take enforcement action. Chairman, we don't have the Department M, so to speak, in 2007. I want to know how much resources the police put into this area. CP, we make reference to the tools used by law enforcement agencies in other common law jurisdictions. In fact, we are using such technology. What about the manpower resources, the budget, the annual expenditure? Concerning road safety, we do submit a controlling officer's report to LegCo every year. Yes, perhaps we can find the relevant paragraph in the report. CP, can you give us the information? Can you give me a breakdown from that overall figure? That's a bit difficult, Chairman, because 90% of the expenditure incurred by the police is on manpower resources. 10% is on the other charges. Thank you. Paul, I have no further questions. Kenneth, can we move on? I have nothing more to add for this part, and I think we should move on to part 4. Chairman, measures to promote safe vehicle operation. This is very important, Chairman. We're talking about the safety of life and limb. Now, we've all recently seen the report on the Lama incident. We need to make sure that there is safety at sea and also safety on our roads. So I want to talk about enforcement first. May I refer members to figure 9. So the director of audit sent his colleagues to write on PLBs, and concerning PLBs with seat belts, the seat belt wearing rate was lower than 10%. So can I ask the CP how you take enforcement action? I do from time to time ride on a minibus or a PLB, and I haven't come across surprise checks concerning seat belt wearing. And I haven't seen the transport department's safety campaigns promoting the idea or the message that passengers must wear seat belts if the PLBs are fitted or are fitted with seat belts. CP. Now, as members are aware, not all PLBs have seat belts, and also, you know, from the outside we can't see whether the passengers wear the seat belts, and so if we want to take enforcement action, we have to board the PLBs. As you know, our traffic police officers are uniformed officers, and so if a traffic police officer stops a minibus and wants to board the minibus, then you can imagine that the passengers will all very quickly wear their seat belts. And so it's difficult to take enforcement action in this manner, and that's why every year we mount 2 or 3 operations. We send plainclothes police officers to board or to ride on PLBs, like what the director of audit did. And then when our officers discover that there are passengers who are not wearing seatbelts, we'll ask the driver to stop the PLB. Now, if we are at an education state, we'll just give advice to the passengers. But then, if we are in an enforcement stage, then we will issue summonses to the passengers. And in fact, as this report suggests, in 2011 and 2012, we mounted operations, and over 1,200 passengers were discovered to be not wearing seat belts. And in 90% of the cases, we took prosecution action. Maybe the director of audit feels that we should not let the remaining 10% off too lightly. Commissioner, now in fact we've produced a TV API. Of course that TV API doesn't merely remind passengers of PLBs to wear seat belts. We also try to remind passengers that they should pay attention to other things. And we've also printed big stickers for distribution to the operators and the drivers of PLBs, and these stickers are for the back of the seats on the PLBs. Yes, Chairman, concerning 4.17. I want to know whether you are referring to PLBs with seat belts. David, yes, at that time we chose PLBs with seat belts. Yes, thank you. So we can see that people's safety awareness is not enough. The transport department should step up publicity. And the CP said that plainclothes police officers had to be deployed to carry out the operations. I think there should be more such operations. And I think we should make passengers understand that if they do not wear their seatbelts, they will be prosecuted. And if there are more prosecution cases for people who have really broken the law, then people will be more alert and their safety awareness will be increased. All right, I now want to ask a question about figure 7.
冇裝安全帶。
PLBs that have not installed seatbelts. It's at 1,815 PLBs. You can call these death traps. We are used to wearing seatbelts, and recently I've done some research on the internet. Figures from the US in 2009. Those passengers without seatbelts, the fatality is 47 times higher. I also see that in paragraph 4.6, the Ombudsman had also recommended the administration to consider extending the passenger seatbelt requirement, but the industry will say that costs are very high, can't make money, and if this is implemented, costs will escalate. So in paragraph 4.6, we see a lot of views. It costs 80,000 to 100,000. So I'd like to ask the TD, so are you just going to turn a blind eye, and have you considered subsidizing these PLBs to retrofit seatbelts? Because the study indicated it's much safer when you wear a safe seatbelt. Yes, could you respond? In current situations, under current legislation, prior to 1st of August 2004, they are not mandatorily required to install a seatbelt. And we had balanced the industry's views at the time. In fact, installing seatbelts incurs costs. Chairman, you mentioned the Marine Department. 1st of October, Lama incident. The Marine Department had called for higher standards regarding safety. But from the policy perspective, safety has to come first. So we will continue to communicate with the industry and encourage them, even though there's no mandatory requirement for old PL buses to install seatbelts. We'd like to encourage them to install seatbelts. Just now you were asked whether you would subsidize. Yes, life is important. We need to consider the industry operators, if there is a government subsidy, you have to consider the ramifications. The taxis will call for similar subsidies and so on. So we have to be careful. The Secretary needs to consider what has to come first. If you think life is important, then you have to subsidize that installation of seatbelts. I'd like to ask the Secretary another policy question. You can refer to in Annex B health check requirements in the mainland and overseas countries. Put simply, so drivers above 70 years of age, they have to have an annual check. And with the exception of bus drivers, where they are required to have annual checks, but taxis and PLB drivers are professional drivers. And the PLBs are large vehicles. So I don't think there should be a differentiation between buses and minibuses. They are driving on the road every day. So why can't we require PLBs and taxi drivers to have an annual check after a certain age? Chairman. Yes, Secretary, could you explain the situation? In Annex B, the health check requirements in mainland and overseas countries, I recall, end of last year, in Taiwan, there was a severe bus incident. The transport panel had a special meeting, and I had already expressed my view. In oral questions, I had also responded. If you look at health check requirements in Hong Kong compared to other jurisdictions, it seems that other countries are more stringent. So in light of the Taiwan bus incident, the Transport Department had pledged that they would follow up on the annual check the health check requirements for professional drivers. They also have concerns. After the bus accident, the operators and unions had also provided their views. So from the employees and employers' perspective, we are communicating with them. In franchise buses, as the Secretary said, in light of the severe bus accident last November, we are reviewing bus driver health check requirements. The bus drivers have already consulted their company doctor and have some preliminary views. We've also met with unions and collected union views. We are now waiting for the bus company opinions, and we will consolidate these views and also seek professional opinion. And this work is ongoing. Regarding other issues, for other passenger vehicles, our requirement of an annual check for when drivers reach the age of 70, and for people age 70, even if they have even if they pass the health check, they can choose to get a 1-year or 3-year license, and we are reviewing this arrangement. We hope, and actually we are already undertaking we are already implementing the requirements in Schedule 1 of the legislation, where if drivers have certain diseases, their driving license will not be renewed. we also need to seek professional view. But for people aged 70, we hope we can return to LegCo this year on our review for drivers above 70 years of age. We would like to complete this part first before looking at other types of professional drivers. Hong Kong is rather unique because the number of professional drivers and people who have professional licenses, there's a big discrepancy. For example, the actual taxi drivers are about 57,000, but there are some 215,000 people who have taxi licenses. And this is the same as private vehicle licenses. Before the age of 70, their license is valid for 10 years. So we need to consider the ramifications if these licensing arrangements are adjusted. And of course, this would also apply to commercial drivers. And we will also look at the requirements of different professional drivers. You know, you're saying that professional drivers and franchise bus companies require an annual health check for bus drivers between the ages of 50 and 70. But in part 1 of the audit report, in diagrams 1 and 3, a bus is a heavy vehicle, and if there are accidents, a bus can be a lethal weapon. So why do we have such a high incidence of accidents involving buses? Have you conducted research why buses, why do we have a high number of accidents involving buses? Have you looked at the reason? Accidents involving buses versus other vehicles. I don't have an analysis of that. I could provide some information later. But I think one reason could be, first of all, we have an accident involvement rate per million vehicle kilometers. So buses spend a long time on the roads, and they cover almost every corner of Hong Kong. So the chances of accidents are high. And another point, this is just a statistic. We don't have the reasons for the accidents. You cannot estimate that from the figure. It might not be totally related to the health condition of the driver, and it might not even be related to the bus itself. Well, have you done some research? You can do some research. Yeah, actually, we look at the type of accidents, number of accidents for the past year, for each year, and for buses, we are aware that a lot of accidents are due to passengers not being able to adapt to a moving bus, and there are accidents in the bus. You have to understand, we have a lot of double-decker buses in Hong Kong. There's also standing room, and as the population ages, there are more of these types of accidents. And after analysis, we do conduct some education, but I don't have the detailed analysis on hand. I just have the preliminary information. I don't have any other questions. I'd like to follow up on 4.7 on PLBs. The average figure is that the average age is 12.7 years, and some vehicles can operate 20 years. And 1,800 PLBs don't have seat belts, and 1,007 PLBs are 8 to 11 years old. So in the coming 3 or 4 years, they should be replaced. So looking at figure 7, we have a breakdown of LPG diesel buses. So we have a lot of green and red minibuses. We have 288 diesel RMBs, 546 diesel GMBs. So is it possible there were subsidies for LPG taxis, but I'm not sure if there were subsidies for LPG minibuses. So can we provide subsidies and make it more environmental friendly and safer by installing seat belts? Because some taxis had the subsidy. So can we provide subsidies for these 800 odd minibuses to install seat belts? Have you considered that? Yes, you had responded. You can do so again. If you look at the legislative requirement, prior to 1st of August 2004, registered public minibuses do not have a mandatory requirement to install seat belts, but we encourage them to do so. I had also explained just now why the government had not pledged to subsidize them installing seat belts. There were other policy considerations. Well, of course we can review this situation. Mr. said if there are other considerations, for example, we can have environmental considerations and subsidize them to convert. In fact, we want to reduce pollution, so we work with EPD to promote upgrading of these fleets and make it more environmental friendly. There is some progress made. I can provide information up till end of March 2013. There were 1,470 diesel minibuses, and there are different environmental subsidies for diesel vehicles, including minibuses, for where they can upgrade. In this year's policy address, the CE had also said there is a 10 billion program for diesel commercial vehicles, including public minibuses, to upgrade. The EPD has just completed its consultation, and during consultation it doesn't only subsidize them to upgrade, they are also given a time period where they cannot register and operate on the roads. So in other words, if this program is implemented, diesel minibuses, after a certain year, they will have to be off the road.
新嘅小巴咧，
And all new PLBs from then on, I think the PLBs must have been registered after 2004 and they must be retrofitted with safety belts. So we're now encouraging the trade to replace the vehicles under the scheme. So we need the incentives. I'd like to welcome the administrations for doing that. Regarding seat belts, I'd like to declare that from time to time I also ride on PLBs. But I discovered that there are two types of PLBs. Some have seat belts installed, others do not. When the passengers board the PLB, it is a habit to assume that there are no seat belts on the PLBs, and even if seat belts are there, they wouldn't, put it on. So I think we need to conduct a study. It should be a simple study. Simply ask the passengers on a PLB, because even for the same route, there are two types of PLBs: those with and those without seat belts. So if they're used to riding on a PLB without a seat belt, then even if they're sitting on a PLB with seat belts, they wouldn't put it on. And also the drivers do not remind the passengers. Is it because they don't have to bear the brunt of the penalty, and only the passengers will be punished? So the fact that some or half or large percentage of these PLBs are not retrofitted with sitting belts, so that passengers who ride on PLBs with seat belts, they still don't put them on. So I think we need to do something. Otherwise, the seat belts installed on those PLBs are wasted because passengers are not putting them on. I think you should, other than the Director of Audit, who would deploy people to ride on these PLBs, but I don't see that will help resolve the problem. We have to consider how we can really do a bit of promotion and expedite the process for the PLB operators to know, and for the passengers as well to know, that very soon all PLBs will have seat belts, and that they will get used to putting on the seat belts, and that there will be prosecution. I'd like to know whether you have enforcement figures about people who have been prosecuted for failure to wear the seat belts. Secretary, in 2011-2012, we would carry out 2 to 3 major operations, and we found out 1,200 odd passengers who did not wear seat belts. For 90% of those, we prosecuted them. For the other remaining 2%, we issue warnings. But we need to carry out special operations to tackle this problem. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, if I may also add that Mr. Ng asked that the passengers tend not to put on the seat belts. I think I also agree that it's a very common phenomenon. You don't need to conduct a study to know that. Very often it's not just the PLBs. Even if you look the passengers riding on ferries, very few of them will wear the seat belts. It's a question of safety consciousness, and I think we need to really step up the efforts and ask the departments concerned to follow up on this to improve on the situation. Before I follow up, I'd like to make some housekeeping announcements. We still have part 5 to discuss, and if we cannot finish by 1, Mr. Secretary, would you agree to stay on for another 15 minutes so that we can complete our scrutiny of the report? Will members agree that we stay until 1:15? Mr. Ng Sing. I'll be brief. Looking at charts 2 and 3, both chart 2 is about the number of vehicles per thousand. Chart 3 is for every million kilometers you say that because buses tend to run 24 hours on the road, and you try to differentiate them in this way. For both charts, you know the buses have the highest accident rates. Mr. Low, the Deputy Commissioner, told us that since buses are double-decker buses, and when elderly people board these buses, or if they are then there's also standing passengers. So do you have any records which do not just include buses, but also the accidents which happen within the compartment of the buses, and also, you know, accidents involving buses in collision with other vehicles, so that the number of accidents involving buses are not as many as we otherwise would imagine, according to charts 2 and 3. We do have such analysis. When we prepare the chart, we will compare one category of vehicles with another. We have not deliberately we've taken out accidents involving passengers tripping and falling inside buses. Can you provide us with some information? Other than accidents happening within the bus compartment, we also like to know the number of accidents involving buses and other vehicles. Next, para 4.44 and 4.45 regarding measures for franchise buses to help lower the accident rates, and that would include statutory measures like the speed limit, 70 kilometers that is, and also drivers over the age of 50 would need to go through annual physical checks, new drivers would need to go through training, speed limits, installation of black box, seat belts. But apparently there is no item concerning the roster system for bus drivers. Very often bus drivers complain that the company require them to finish a trip within a very short time, and in order to meet the target, they might actually drive faster and even allow shorter time for passengers to board and alike. I understand that this may vary from route to route, but have you ever conducted such a study to relieve the drivers of such pressure? Commissioner for Transport. Well, for another reason, we are conducting the same survey. That is about bus drivers not, sticking to the frequency. Well, the reason is that when the route was first designed, bus drivers, it is expected that the bus drivers will be able to cover the road within a specified period of time. But since the traffic conditions might have changed, traffic conditions might have become congested, and the driver cannot finish a trip within that period, and as a result, they were not more able to comply with the frequency. We are now, together with bus company, looking at some of those routes and find out exactly how long the trip actually takes and adjust the frequency of that route accordingly. And if we need to deploy more buses because the trips now take longer, we would do that. And if there's no need to deploy more buses, we would adjust the frequency accordingly. And that will help lower the pressure on bus drivers to rush and to meet the schedule. We've done a lot already. You can see that the situation now has returned to normal. So the efforts that we've made actually has a bearing on the improvement. Other than liaising with the bus companies, do you have any deterrents so that private bus operators will not, compile tight frequencies resulting in accidents which are not really necessary? Chairman, for the franchise bus companies, they don't have the incentive to do that. Every time there is an accident, the bus companies will incur severe losses. It will also hurt the confidence of the passengers. They may also need to pay out compensation. They have to pay higher insurance premium. So there is an incentive for the franchise bus companies to work with us to improve on the frequency of buses. Because if they don't do that, many buses will not be able to meet the target, and there will be complaints. So the bus company should have the incentives, and they are not under a lot of pressure to require the bus drivers to complete the trip within a specific time in order that they can pick up more passengers. We're in our routine discussion with bus companies about route arrangements. They are most willing to ensure that the buses are deployed on schedule. So I don't see any incentive for the bus companies to try to force the bus drivers to drive faster. On the other hand, they have the incentive to really, improve on the traveling time per trip. Well, another question I'd like to ask about is the zebra crossings. For drivers, many drivers tend to ignore the fact that passengers have the right of way when crossing the zebra crossing. So do you have any prosecution figures to show that the problem has become more serious, that drivers normally don't stop when pedestrians are crossing the road along the zebra crossing? I have also observed recently about the reports on the zebra crossings. Over the last 2 years, we've actually reviewed the traffic arrangements for zebra crossings, whether or not there are sufficient signs to remind drivers that there will be a crossing ahead. And we found out that the zebra crossings are up to standard. As for the prosecution figures, I'll defer to the police. Chairman, I don't have the information offhand. Okay. Please give us the information later. Okay, any other questions? If not, Kenneth. Thank you. Next, I'd like to follow up on the cases involving speeding by taxi drivers on page 50. And you note that there's a serious problem of speeding involving taxi drivers. So I don't understand. For every vehicle, 1,000 vehicles, you have the number of speeding offences. So I'd like the Commissioner to explain this chart to us. I think we obtained such information from the TD. Commissioner? Mr. To? Perhaps the police commission can help. Well, my opinion is that if you catch the vehicle once every time, it's 1,000, otherwise it's 1,700. Mr. To, I think the situation is like what the police commissioner had just described. Yeah, you can give us the figures if you could, Kenneth. I know that the taxi drivers have to change shift or have to go for meals or go to the toilet, and therefore they would speed. But the Transit Department is now considering additional measures to improve on the situation, including the requirement for taxis to be installed with speed limit devices, as in the case of PLBs. So do you have a timetable for that? And secondly, the trade is saying that it's very expensive. For the speed limiter, how much does it cost? Thank you. Commissioner, Chairman, the speed limiting device have now been installed on PLBs. We don't have plans at the moment for them to be installed on taxis. There are several considerations here. First of all, taxi is a personalized form of transport, and the number of passengers, the passenger sits in the taxi. If he finds that the driver is too fast, he can immediately require the driver to slow down. And even if the taxi driver were not speeding, if the passenger feels that he's not comfortable with the speed, he can still ask the driver to slow down. And secondly, the speed limiter on PLB is set at 80 kilometers. Because the roads traveled by PLBs, the maximum speed limit is 80 kilometers. So the speed limiter would therefore, could be installed on the PLBs, but for taxis, they can travel on roads with a maximum speed of 110 kilometers. So if we install such a limiter, it will not be very useful unless they exceed 110 kilometers per hour on those roads with a speed limit of 110 kilometers. So going back to my first point, the taxi is a personalized form of transport, and the passengers can always ask the driver to slow down. Thank you. Without any specific measures, what measures will you undertake to tackle the problem of speeding by taxi drivers? And secondly, I don't know whether or not the police commissioner have any information here. If I were a passenger, let's say, and if the passenger makes a report against the taxi driver for speeding, and as a result, the taxi driver is prosecuted, do we have any such statistics of such cases? Commissioner for Transport. Chairman, to deal with speeding on the part of taxi drivers, first of all, we have to tackle the problem through enforcement, and secondly, through publicity and education. For the taxi trade, in the training courses for taxi drivers, or retraining courses, part of the retraining course focus on safety issues and how they cope, and drivers may cope with contingency situations and roads codes or guidelines for the use of roads. For these advanced driving training courses, we do have such elements in the course. The TT also organizes every year safety campaign for targeting drivers' commercial vehicles. One of the focal issues would be speeding. We tend to focus on drivers of commercial vehicles such as PLBs and taxis. Police Commissioner, regarding taxi passengers complaining against the driver for speeding, I think prosecutions cannot rely simply on the claim made by a taxi passenger. I think we can make a comparison here. On a PLB, since there is a speed indicator, if a passenger complains against the driver for speeding, normally we would ask for an inspection of the vehicle, and then we can check whether or not the speed limiter is functioning normally. But we cannot just rely on the claim by the passenger saying that the driver has exceeded the speed limit. On the taxi, you can't do that. We don't have such a display except that you can look at the speedometer. The police will, in the light of the complaint, will look at whether or not the driver has violated the traffic light signal requirements or ignore some traffic signs and so on. Chairman, the final follow-up question. You talk about the speed limiter. I'd like to ask whether you would require the taxis to be installed with a speed indicator so that passengers can complain to the police if the driver's speed. Chairman, there had been such a suggestion before, but there are technical constraints that we need to look at. Nevertheless, we'll consider that there's more room within the PLB, and so that we can install the speed limiter. Whereas the space within the taxi is rather small. There is already a speedometer, and we also require the driver to put on the fare, the tariff, the rules governing the tariff, and so they would take up a lot of room already. Furthermore, you need to display the identity card of the taxi driver, which also bears his photo. So we're still looking at this to see whether there's room for, and whether technically it's feasible for us to install that the speed limiter. No further questions. Ellen, you're next, but before you do ask a question, I'd like to declare that I'm in the independent non-executive director of the a consortium which operates city bus, a new bus company. In part 5 of the report, it is suggested that the coordinates recorded by police are not accurate. Some of the coordinates reported actually was found to be outside of Hong Kong. I think the audit report now has identified the problem, and I'm sure the administration will try to look at whether or not we can improve on that with the help of technology.
I think departments concerned can tell us later how they are going to make improvements concerning the input of grid references. Now, but Chairman, I have a wider question. Looking at parts 4 and 5, we are of the view that we want the resources used to be able to reduce the number of accidents, injuries, and deaths. We can see that concerning accidents involving buses and also speeding on the part of taxis, these are quite serious problems that we have. So can I ask the Secretary and the 2 commissioners this question? Now, the 2 departments get hold of a lot of data, some of them more accurate, some less accurate. I want to know whether there is a mechanism to help us better prevent traffic accidents. Yes, we understand that you have resources for publicity, for public education, for taking enforcement action. But then as road users, we can't help asking why so many accidents involve buses. Now, you know, some people are of the view that bus drivers operating double-decker buses drive as if they are driving racing cars. They drive as if they were driving Ferraris. Right, so the Transport Department and the police have collected a lot of data. They get hold of a lot of data, and you discover that buses are often involved in traffic accidents. So can you talk to the bus companies, for example? Can you sit down with them and talk to them? And similarly, we do have taxi associations and minibus associations. So can you use this Director of Audit's report as a starting point to move ahead? And that is, can we, or can the government establish a platform to discuss with the public transport operators all these data, all these trends, and all these enforcement difficulties? All right, I want to say that in fact we are now already in part 5, and I understand that the Commissioner for Transport is also one of the directors of the bus company. So I believe you're wearing 2 hats at the moment. Yes, Chairman. I think it's more appropriate for me to give an answer in my capacity as the Commissioner for Transport. I have regular meetings with the managers of franchised bus companies, and my colleagues do have close contacts with the bus companies. Now, for example, some buses or some buses stop in the middle of the road in the terminus instead of at the lay-bys, for example. And as a result, people have to walk on the carriageways, for example. So if we discover that certain complaints are established, and then these will be brought up at our regular meetings with the franchised bus operators concerning traffic accidents involving buses. Now, as the Deputy Commissioner has pointed out, we may not have a breakdown at the moment. For example, concerning accidents caused by the driving attitude of drivers. But then if we discover that a lot of accidents were caused by improper or incorrect driving attitudes, we'll bring up the matter with the franchised bus companies. Now, in fact, for bus drivers, they do have pre-service training courses and also in-service training courses, refresher courses, for example. And so we will ask franchised bus companies to take some action. I don't know whether the Secretary can respond from a policy perspective. With regard to the issues raised in parts 4 and 5 of this report. Yes, Chairman, thank you. Mr. Leung referred to part 5, accuracy of traffic accident data. And because of this report, the Transport Department, the Bureau, and the police have sat down and discussed what sort of data we really needed. You know, sometimes if we collect too much data, that won't be helpful. So we have to identify the data that we need. And also when we talk about road safety, we have to look at various aspects. The design of our roads, and also driving behavior on the part of drivers, and also for franchised buses. There is quite a serious speeding problem. I don't know whether what I'm going to say is scientifically based. Maybe some more in-depth analysis is required. In November last year, there was the very serious accident in Taiwan involving a bus, and so we had a special meeting, and according to the bus drivers attending the meeting, they said that they didn't want the frequency of the bus service to be affected, and so they were in a rush, in a hurry. In other words, in fact, the frequency in the frequency table is reasonable, but then sometimes there's congestion on the road, and so the Bureau has to look at road conditions as well. And when we talk about safety installations on public vehicles, now for PLBs, we have we drew a line at 2004, and that is because when we implement certain measures, we have to take into account a lot of factors, including the operational costs incurred. But of course, I understand that nothing is more important than human life. Nothing is more valuable than human life. This we agree. And then concerning the physical conditions, the health conditions of the drivers, now as we've just said, we are having reviews. And of course, passenger safety is of utmost importance. Seat belts, and the chairman also mentioned safety at sea, marine safety. For example, if there are life vests, are people wearing them, for example? So I think we need a multi-pronged approach to enhance safety awareness. But I think we will learn from this report, and we'll look at whether our policies are adequate or not. CP, yes? Yes, thank you, Chairman. I wish to respond to the point made by Mr. Leung concerning the inaccurate grid reference. We fully appreciate the need to have accurate data. So we discovered that there were errors made by our colleagues, and we also identified problems of the system. If we can't deal with the problems of the system, with the methods for collecting data, then these incidents will recur. So why is it that, you may ask, why is it that there are these serious problems and yet we are not aware of these problems. Now, in fact, on a monthly basis, we have meetings when we get information about inaccurate input of data. In 2011, 2012, there were about 100 cases of errors every year. But then every year we have about over 10,000 accidents. So we're talking about an error rate of less than 1.5%. But here in this report, we can see that the problem is serious, and so we will carry out a review. Yes, Chairman, I want to say that the Secretary is able to understand what I'm concerned about. Now, you know that in an audit report, issues are dealt with in different parts, but I think this is one big issue and should not be viewed on a piecemeal basis. And I'm talking about traffic safety, road safety. This is one big issue. And Secretary, I hope that after we've seen this report, there will be a better utilization of resources to promote road safety so that we'll see less deaths, less injuries caused by traffic accidents. So, Secretary, perhaps you can give the PAC a paper on how you intend to improve upon the existing policies. For example, what are you going to do concerning government behavior, collection of data, attitude of drivers, passengers, safety awareness? Will you provide such information to the PAC? Yes, Chairman, I am willing to provide a written response. Alan, any other points? Kenneth? I've got one final question on part 5, grid reference. I want to know whether grid reference is just a series of figures or letters so that we can identify the location on the map. Now, the traffic police officers may describe the location to the transport department, say outside number 500 Kings Road. But then the transport department has to translate the description into a grid reference, and this is where things have gone wrong. If that's the case, then can the two sides double check that the right location is pinpointed on the map? CP and then Commissioner for Transport. Yes, Chairman, when the police investigate traffic accidents, we describe the location of the accident based on maps published by the Hong Kong government. There is no need for us to use grid references. But then to facilitate the transport department's study and analysis, we try to give assistance concerning the grid reference material. There are two methods. First of all, portable GPS devices. But then you know that in many places in Hong Kong, say in the hilly areas, you can't get the you can't really use the GPS device, and so you have to make use of the map system in the office and then do the input. Now, so you know there are two systems. One is the system that we use for investigation. The other system is the transport department system, and the two systems have different users. So you may do double checking, but then one uses verbal descriptions of this description by words, the other uses a different basis. And so that was why I said there were about 100 cases per year in the past years. And we thought that we had already solved the problem, because out of 15,000 cases, we only had about 100 odd cases of error. But now we see that there is this very big problem, and we have to resolve this problem. Now, concerning our system, we do not use grid references. And we will be looking at the matter with the Transport Department to see how improvements can be made. Commissioner for Transport. I think I'll ask the Deputy Commissioner to say more about the use of grid references. Yes, Chairman. Concerning the records based on grid references. Now, I want to say that police officers were present at the location of the traffic accident, so they are clear as to where the traffic accidents occurred. And so, under the present arrangement for division of labor, the police provide the information to us. There are two methods. First, getting the grid reference using a portable GPS device on the spot. And second, the police officers return to their offices and make use of computerized maps to find the relevant grid references. And they give the grid references to the Transport Department, and we do the double checking. In fact, such grid references are helpful when we analyze the distribution of traffic accidents. It's important that we know the locations of the accidents, and we have to rely on the grid references. We understand that in the input process, there may be some difficulties. And so after we've received the information, we'll try to compare the grid references with the descriptions by words provided by the police. And as the CP has pointed out, with the problems in the systems, we will follow up with the police to see how we can make sure that we can input more accurate data. Kenneth, I have no further follow-up questions, Chairman. All right. Secretary and the two commissioners, if we have further questions, we will put them to you in writing. So I thank the Secretary and the other government officials for being here today. We're going to write our report based on your replies. Thank you very much. We don't need a closed meeting, members. You can now leave. Thank you. Thank you, David, and your colleagues. Thank you.